Okay, so we're going to be talking about the stimulation theory for MBTI today. This video is going to be 6 modules or chapters. We're going to be going over the neuroscience of it and also the dimensionality, it was the socionics. And then we're going to talk a brief description about the functions from a Jungian perspective instead of Myers. And then we're going to go into applicable application, such as the passion theory, the theory about what makes us passionate, the undeveloped theory, the things about the weaknesses in our lives, and then the relationship theories in terms of compatibility theories. So we're going to break this part into part 1, which is going to cover the theoretical knowledge, 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to go into the applicable applications and theories that you can use in your daily lives, chapter 4, 5, and 6. So chapter 1, the Neuroscience of Personality. So you can see the deeper colors are more activated in terms of the brain, and then the lighter colors, the lighter shades are the less activated, and then white is completely, no activations or barely any activation, stimulation within that area. Now, the reason neuroscience is important to understand a stimulation theory, and even MBTI at a larger scale, is because then we can understand, I guess, the TE, or the physical aspect of MBTI. Neuroscience and MBTI correlation, the similarity between our brain, physical functioning, and MBTI functions. So we're going to go with the first one, the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is the F7, F3, F4, and F8. So this little strip horizontally right there. Now, the frontal lobe is very interesting because this entire brain scan is part of the neocortex, the more developed part of the brain. And each of these are actually part of the judging family in terms of FE, FI, TE, etc. So we look at the F7 function, or region of the brain. This is actually correlated to FE, extroverted feeling. And F7 is an interesting aspect because it mimics a lot of the traits of FE, such as the mirror neurons, or mirroring other behaviors. And the property that F7 has is actually projecting how someone might feel or react to a given situation in the future. And it's a very imagination-heavy function, where you're simply projecting the outcome of the cause and effect of people, FE. And on the contrast of that, we can actually go to TE, F4, and it follows a very similar pattern as FE in terms of, projecting the cause and effect in external world, but is more geared towards objects of the world. Planning, organization, strategy, those are non-people related, and those are more properties of TE, while FE is more strategic with people than with objects. It's a good way to see it. If we look at the F3, this is actually TI. And this has to do with a lot of logical deductions, a lot of more cause and effect, same with TE, but on an internal plane. Such as math is a very complex thing, or can be very complex, and is very internal and abstract. That's more of the property of TI, to look at the cause and effect of logic and thinking on an internal plane. And then we have F8, which is FI. Now, in contrast to FE, of the cause and effect of how other people might feel and reacting to that, F8 is actually more personal, subjective in the brain. This is your likes and dislikes. And from a neuroscience point of view, this could be tied into memories, but this is simply F8 and FI is very similar, and it's about like and personal value. I like certain ice creams more than other. I like chocolate over vanilla, as an example. Now, if we go into the other things, such as the FETI and the TEFI axis, which is a very common theory, such as, TE goes with FI a lot and FE goes with TI throughout the MBTI spectrum, we can actually understand why the axis exists through this proximity of these regions being so close together. For example, FE or F7 is actually very close to F3, TI. And then F8 and F4, TE, F4, and F8, FI are very close as well. So this has a correlation to the proximity of, the axis function. And usually, regions of the brains that are most close together have a quicker communication style, or often communicate with each other more. So let's look at the high versus low brain scale activity. So this is actually the stimulation of your brain. And this is when certain regions of your brains are activated more or less. For example, let's say you have more neural connections in your FE or your S7. Then, for example, as an FE DOM, ENFJ, ESFJ, or INFJ, ISFJ, for example, you'll be utilizing F7 brain region much more, because you have more neurons there. So when you're firing this section of the brain, you're activating neurons in that region. Now, what if you have, let's say, FE as a lower stack, let's say an INTJ or an INTP or whatever it is that has a lower FE, then that region of your brain, such as F7FE, would actually have less neural connection and be considerably more unconscious. Now, the unconscious aspect could actually be correlated to a lack of neural connections, which means it's actually harder to actually stimulate or tap that section of your brain, making it largely unconscious. And then consciousness could be viewed as the stimulation or activating of neurons within that region of the brain. So if you look at the excitement and neurochemicals, we can tie this understanding of high versus low stimulation into excitement, happiness, and joy. Why do we use our dominant function so much? Why do we enjoy using it so much? There could be a strong correlation to those neurons firing more, like a well-developed muscles in your body. And if you have a very developed region in your brain, such as the FE or whatever other region, then by firing that region more, you could be releasing more neurotransmitter or neurochemicals such as dopamine or serotonin that makes you feel good. So there's a reward to using the most developed muscle in your brain developed region because of that feedback loop in terms of the neural happy chemicals that you get from actually using it, making you use it more. Vice versa could be said for the low stimulation in your brain in the region of that. So let's say lower functions that are just less stimulated or have less neurons, then they're going to release less neurohappy chemicals, making you less likely to use it or even bother to use it, leaving it largely unpracticed and unconscious. All right, so this basically sum up a brief introduction to neuroscience of MBTI, just to allow you guys to go further into the other aspect. But the next chapter is going to be dimension, and that's going to be socionics. So I'm going to see you guys there.